Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our OD talk for April. Before I start, I thought I would just, for everybody that doesn't know us well, introduce you to the worldview people that's on this call. So on this call today, we have Craig Yateman. A lot of you would know Craig from the older years. Craig left Worldview Academy for a few years to work in one of his other businesses, and he came back late last year. So Craig, say hi to everybody.
Hi to everybody.
Thank you. We've also got Mbali. Mbali joined Worldview Academy in February, 1st of February last year, as an OD consultant and a facilitator. So for those of you who haven't met Mbali, Mbali, say hi to everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
That's our Mbali. And then we have Richard. Richard is the person who would always send you your Enneagram reports, remind you to do your pre-reading and your e-learning and all of those things. He holds all the projects together for us. Richard, say good morning so everybody can meet you.
Morning, everybody.
Cool. So that's the Worldview team on the call. You'll see there's also a little camera off camera called #Worldview Academy. That is Janine, our social media and marketing lady. She's on the call taking notes, live tweeting or Xing or whatever it is. And that's us. So if after this cafe you feel like connecting with us to continue the conversation, if you have any questions, any thoughts come up for you, please feel free to connect with any of us that you've met now. All right, I'm going to start the presentation. Welcome to our April OD Talk, OD Cafe. And today we are going to look at how do leaders actually transform organizations. So we believe that we do transformational organization development and that the leadership programs that we do needs to be transformational as well. Last month, for those of you who did join us, we talked about frontline leadership. And today we're diving into the concept of transforming organizations into the more executive higher levels of leadership. As always, our cafe is going to be very interactive, lots of conversations. We're going to start with a check-in where you're going to hopefully meet some interesting people and just talk a little bit about why you are here and maybe your experience in large organizational transformations. We're going to bring you back after the check-in and not take any feedback yet because you're going to continue your conversation a little bit later. I'm going to then share a little bit of research on organizational transformation and how this makes us think about transformational leadership. And we will then put you back into your same breakaway groups to have further discussions about what did this bring up for you, what's working, what's not working. We should be done with that around 10 o'clock and have around 25 to 30 minutes left for feedback. We'll ask everybody to share a little bit with us about the conversations they've had in their breakaway so we can all learn together and share our learning and then try and tie everything back up in terms of what did we hear today. And we will be finished by 10:30. So it's a 90-minute cafe. So for the first breakaway rooms where we're going to put you in, we'd like you to just introduce yourself, meet some interesting people, and talk about what brought you here today. And maybe if you have an example of a large-scale transformation that you've been part of, share that, share the story, and think about what role did the senior leaders play in that transformation. Please think about what you want to share for a minute or so before while I'm setting up the breakout rooms, and you will receive an invitation on your screen the breakout rooms open, I'll also let you know. Give me a second to set them up. All right. You should get an invitation on your screen to go into your breakaway rooms and have a conversation. You're going to have 15 minutes, and then we'll bring you back to the main plenary session. Everybody back. I hope you had wonderful conversations, and my apologies if you were in the middle of something interesting for bringing you back. But there's going to be another chance for you to continue your conversation. All right, I'm going to start the presentation now and share some research and insights with you for it's going to be between 15 and 20 minutes, and then we're going to continue with our conversations, and then we'll take feedback. All right, so when we talk about organizational transformation, it's a very critical decision for an organization, for a board, for an executive team to make. It requires big commitments, both internally and externally. And we find that often the term transformation is misused. And many organizations or senior teams will say they've been involved in multiple transformations. But by our definition, organizational transformation is a metamorphosis. It's intense, it's organization-wide. So we're sharing our definition with you as a start for today's conversation. And we believe that organizational transformation is a planned, it is sustained or needs to be sustainable, it is large scale, and it is revolutionary change with the aim to enhance performance in the organization and to boost the organizational health. I've stolen a quote from Craig that's on the screen here from a blog that he wrote, I think, yesterday or the day before. It was posted on LinkedIn. Because I thought it talked to what we are discussing today. And Craig said that attempting transformational change is risky because it can and must use valuable resources. And if every executive does not fully deploy both their leadership abilities and the organizational resources, then whatever the committed executives use becomes waste when the change fails. And that's quite important because failure then becomes a story about the impossibility of change. And this penalizes the organization for some time to come with negative stories, negative perceptions, change can't happen, the last one was a failure, and just bringing in the point of how important it is to make sure that it works. So we believe that not very many CEOs have successful transformations under their belts. And I've come across an interview, an article that McKinsey published where they interviewed 12 CEOs of global companies who managed to get large transformations right. It's from a wide range of industries and contexts. And the insights from these interviews can be grouped into 3 areas. They said they got it right because they were committed to transforming. And there they talked about affirming their conviction that the business needs to change, that the executives had a clear picture of either the threat or opportunity that's facing the business, and they could clearly articulate 1 or 2 reasons why the transformation was required. They also talked about framing transformation as a higher level of performance rather than a project, rather than a once-off thing that had to happen. And the methods used to achieve historical success were unsuccessful, and therefore we need to try new things. They also talked about setting uncomfortable but inspirational ambitions for the leadership team to orientate the whole company forward to the new and the full potential of the organization. Then when they were talking about leading the transformation from the front, and anybody that knows Worldsview will know that we are always preaching about walking the talk, they talked about showing true ownership by mandating involvement and getting into detail. So they talked about personally role modeling the future that they aspired to see. And the one CEO said that they role modeled it so well that the detractors had no place to hide inside this transformation. They also involved everybody in the transformation, not just senior leaders. Transformations, large-scale transformations, obviously often have ambitious targets with ambitious timelines, and they felt that this required a large team to execute. They also found that by doing this, the staff came back with lots of ideas on how to improve the organization, and a lot of them were actually surprised by the intellectual value that there was in the organization by involving everybody. They also talked about building execution discipline from the start by focusing on the immediate activity. So that was important for them to get rid of limiting mindsets. If there's a perception that it can't be done or you can't afford it or whatever, get rid of that quickly and focus on immediate next steps. The one CEO spoke about, they started with immediate interventions, which created what they called first speed. And this, the first speed then created the oxygen that is needed for the full transformation, which they referred to as second speed. Also part is leading the transformation from the front. They talked about developing one voice as a leadership team. And that's also something we always talked about, aligning the leadership team, getting them to speak in the same language with one voice. And this encourages the many that has to go the extra mile through the top leaders showing their commitment and their resolution to the transformation. Then looking at the last bucket that they found, sustaining a new way of working. And as you saw, our definition included that the transformation needs to be sustainable. They talked about investing in people and culture from the start. So this was very important for them to address the needed shifts in behavior and culture early on in the transformation. And they were all uniform in their view that the cultural change underpinned the sustainability of the impact. They also made engagement personal so that people in the company know why it is transforming. They recognize that transformation builds momentum and ultimately sustain the impact when all the employees, lower level, and everybody feels empowered. So they were celebrating the little things often. And then lastly, they talk about flexing the new execution discipline to help weather future challenges. And I love this one. They said that the better business outcomes are the overt goals or the intended goals of the transformation. But an invaluable byproduct is execution discipline and to flex this new muscle right from the start. All right, so that's feedback from a few CEOs in terms of transformation that worked well for them. So we say that transformational change is radical. It is often sudden and dramatic. It reshapes organizations and it disrupts. And although the intended outcome is positive, it usually and often creates fear, doubt, and insecurity in the employees that's part of this transformation. And as with any type of change, as all of us will know, this means that people can be our most significant barrier to positive large-scale transformation. We then think that this type of change requires transformational leadership, and we'll go into more detail about transformational leadership next. But high level, it's a type of leadership style that strives to inspire the followers to achieve more than they ever thought possible. So there's a lot of personality, charisma, and inspiration when we talk about transformational leadership. Just quickly, where does transformational leadership, the concept comes from? James Downton he coined the term in the 60s, and it was further developed by the leadership expert and presidential biographer James McGregor Burns in the 70s. And according to Burns, transformational leadership can be seen when leaders and followers make each other advance to a higher level of morality and motivation. Later, Bernard Bass in the 80s expanded upon Burns's original ideas to develop what is today referred to as Bass's transformational leadership theory. And according to him, transformational leadership can be defined based on the impact it has on its followers. Bass also worked extensively with Avolio, and there's a lot of research done by them and a lot of writing by them about transformational leadership. They are known for talking about the difference between transactional and transformational leadership. Transactional being based on rewards, punishment, contingent reinforcement, etc., as opposed to, in contrast to transformational leadership, which inspires and motivates followers to go beyond their self-interest and pursue higher order goals. They're also famous for the 4 I's, which is the 4 components of transformational leadership that they spoke about as idealized influence or charisma, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. So what I've done on the next slide is I've looked at a lot of research and a lot of theories on transformational leadership, and I have come up with 5 aspects that I think or components in terms of what it is that transformational leaders do. At the bottom there, I attempted to think about where all my research comes from. So obviously it's Burns, it's Bass and Avolio. Some of it is from Cotter's book on leading change, quite a few Harvard Business Review articles, the Irish lady, Daly, I can't remember her name now, her writing, and then a lot of conversations with ChatGPT. And interestingly, every time you ask ChatGPT a question about transformational leadership, it gives you different answers. And then, of course, there's a beautiful page on Wikipedia about transformational leadership, really the longest Wikipedia page I've ever seen on any topic that I've researched, with over 60 references in there, and then a few statements that's not referenced, which was interesting. So I've taken it together in 5 points to say that what transformational leaders do. The first one is to inspire vision and to make sure that vision resonates with a broader audience. The vision often then challenges the status quo and offers a new direction or goal that captures the imagination and commitment of the followers. And it serves as a rallying point, especially for disparate groups, to come together and work towards the common goal. Transformational leaders also mobilize support. They build coalitions across diverse communities, and through their charisma and persuasion and ability to connect people on an emotional level, they can galvanize widespread support. Crucial for sustaining the momentum and overcoming the resistance to change. So you'll see in a lot of these points, there's quite a lot about the personality of the leader, the charismatic way they come across, connecting to people, and so on. Transformational leaders also empower their followers by fostering a sense of ownership and agency in the change process, and we heard some of that in the research done with the interviews of the 12 CEOs, to get people like they feel they're part of it, they have a say in it, and that the change affects them, but they affect the change. So through empowering the followers, transformational leaders encourage creativity, innovation, and risk-taking, empowering those individuals to contribute their ideas and talents. And this has a result of distributed leadership, which is a beautiful idea to ensure that the movement is not dependent on a single leader or a small leadership team, but is actually driven by the collective effort of many. They also catalyze action, they mobilize resources and bring about tangible change, providing clear direction, removing obstacles. Removing obstacles is a very important factor, and facilitating collaboration. Another important point is they translate their vision into concrete goals, projects, initiatives, and outcomes. And thereby their ability to inspire the confidence and perseverance in the face of challenge is crucial for sustaining the momentum. And then lastly, as we also heard from the CEOs interviewed in the McKinsey article, is they create a cultural shift. They challenge prevailing norms, values, and beliefs that uphold the existing system. And by promoting new ways of thinking and acting, they can align people to the revolutionary vision. This is absolutely essential for sustaining long-term change beyond the initial upheaval. And as we saw in the interviews from the CEOs, they also say this needs to happen quickly and early on in the transformation. So looking at all of this, the terms that we used here and the language that we used there, I then dove into what is new in transformational leadership. And I have to tell you what I've come up with is, I think, old wine in new bottles. There's not very many new concepts, but there's new language, which I'm going to share with you now. And the new language is actually the language that we are currently using and that we are used to. So I'm not going to talk through most of all of these in detail because it is something that we talk about. I know at Worldsview, when we have conversations about leadership development and what the issues are with leaders in the organization, things like agility, adaptability, authenticity, etc., comes up so often. But there's been quite a lot of new research and thinking on transformational leadership that's been evolving in organizational psychology, organizational development, organizational behavior, management theory, and some empirical research. And the language that is used nowadays is things like transformational leaders need to be authentic. They have to bring their true selves, and through doing so, they build trust and credibility by being transparent. Emotional intelligence comes up a lot. I actually asked ChatGPT, tell me something interesting about transformational leadership. And ChatGPT said that the emphasis on emotional intelligence and authenticity is quite interesting, and then had a few points about that. So the first two ChatGPT actually found interesting. And we all know about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, empathy, social skills, which helps with things like better communication, conflict resolution, relationship building, etc. Adaptability, we know, is so important in the current context that we're all living in. It acknowledges the complexities, the uncertainties of the modern business environment, and it means that transformational leaders can lead their teams through ambiguity and adversity effectively. Inclusivity is becoming more and more important to help leaders focus on creating a diverse and inclusive workplace where all employees feel valued and empowered to contribute their perspectives and talents. A coaching mindset, excuse me, is also sometimes referred to as transformational coaching. And we know how big a trend that's become in current leadership research and thinking, where leaders take the role of a coach to empower and develop their team members, facilitating growth, facilitating learning, and self-discovery. Systems thinking is becoming more and more important to help leaders increasingly recognize the interconnectedness of organizational systems and processes, which then also help them to better understand the root causes of problems. Agility, I mean, I think back in 2017, we did a Café about agile leadership, and somebody said, oh, the big A, that they're quite tired of the concept of agility, but it is important in order to embrace flexibility, collaboration, iterative processes, and in order for the organization and the leadership team to quickly adapt to changing market conditions and customer needs. Purpose-driven leadership, as we saw in everything that I've shared with you before, being able to share a vision and organizational goals connected to a meaningful purpose is extremely important to inspire the employees. And then, of course, digital leadership. We can't do anything without great digital leadership nowadays, where leaders need to understand and leverage technology effectively, drive innovation, drive competitive advantage, and harness the power of data analytics and emerging technologies to optimize processes, enhance customer experiences, and create new business opportunities. And then I also came across, I did quite a bit of digging into research in transformational leadership in South Africa, and came across quite a lot of research. It was interesting. And in one of the articles in the Journal of Contemporary Management, a 2023 article, they talked about transformational leadership in South African context is underpinned by the philosophy and the context of Ubuntu. I am because we are, as a widely embraced value system. There's also quite a bit of research done on the cultural factors that influences our leadership practices in South Africa that includes Ubuntu, social economic disparities and diversity. All right, that's it from me in terms of what I wanted to share with you, what I found through research, what is the old and gold stuff and what is the new stuff. And we're going to put you back into your breakaway groups now to just go and talk about what are your thoughts. Did anything new come up for you? Have you had any new ideas? And given what I've just shared with you, do you have any ideas and insight into how do we actually empower our leaders to be truly transformational? And maybe you have some examples on things that is working and that is not working. I'm going to open the breakaway rooms again, and we're going to give you about 15 minutes again to go and have more conversations. Welcome back, everybody. Let's get some feedback on your the breakaway rooms. What did you discuss? Room 1 had Jabulile, Lorraine, and Roberta. What did you guys talk about? What came up for you?
I was hoping we'll reverse engineer this, start with those, but it's all good. And please, the colleagues on room 1, please feel free to chip in as well. But I think in summary, what we said, what does work is when the leaders embrace their role and the people as well, and it's a shared vision. We find that works quite well, and the detractors tend to really be exposed, when they or it becomes pretty obvious to everyone when they're not buying into the change, compared to when people actually embrace the change. And that I think in closing, we kind of closed with it has to be a way of work. We speak of ways of work and the culture that gets shaped, and it's not just a once-off. It's not a project. It has to be something that is long-term, that it has to be there to stay. And I mean, if you look at, we constantly transforming, so it's definitely not an event. Roberta in our team actually shared a sobbing story, of lack of leadership and the impact that it has, that long impact. And we're just resonating with some of the research that you shared on your site, Lizel. And yeah, is the impacts can be so big and so deep that it may take time for people to recover, whereas when it works so well. Yeah. And maybe if I may add, is the systems portion that always come to haunt us if it's not executed well. It becomes something that we need to constantly look at, and taking the people along, definitely. It's so important. It's something that has to constantly be there, leading with the heart. So yeah. Lorraine, Roberta, please feel free to chip in.
Thanks, Jubilee. I think the only thing that I wanted to maybe add was we were saying the impact of the personality of the leader often plays a role. And I think it goes back to what you highlighted there, Liesl, just the the social skills, so that ability to listen, to connect, to storytell, makes such a difference. So I think these transformational leaders are not academic leaders, that they are really people leaders. Yeah, so I think those kind of characteristics, we kind of said were certainly traits that we'd seen in success stories.
Okay. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Jabu. Roberta, anything you want to add? You good with your team's feedback? Okay. Let's go to room 2. Craig, Gugu, and Samuel.
Thank you, and apologies, I'm having problems with my camera, but I'll just try and just summarize some of the key discussion points that we had in the group, and I'll ask my team to just support me if I've left anything out. So the first thing was really around, we reflected on the issue around the commitment to the transformation process. And one of the reflections that we had is that as leaders, it's important that there is a level of commitment, and that commitment needs to happen by, first of all, the top leaders really being able to communicate amongst themselves, thresh out any issues that they may have, but it's key that they are in unison in terms of the vision and in terms of what it is that needs to happen and how they are driving the change. Because if they are split in terms of their levels of commitment, then that transformation, the rather it impacts the transformation process. And then we also spoke about the fact that the issue of commitment to also establishing a clear culture from the onset. That one is very important, and that leaders need to really focus on making sure that they drive a culture change or a culture shift, and they really put all efforts in terms of ensuring that that culture transformation is really what embeds the transformation process from day one. Because focusing on a culture change in the middle of a project really hampers the delivery and success in terms of the transformation. And then lastly, we spoke about the issue of the fact that really the transformational leadership journey is not that, it's not a theoretical one. It is one that is really embedded on experience. So it's important that as transformational leaders get better and they become, good at transformational leadership, they need to actually participate in execution of large scale transformation projects. So and out of that is really looking at documenting or recording lessons learned and being able to then reflect on those lessons, because this is where the learning happens. And once you have that experience, then all these other personality traits really become built on things like your adaptability, being able to manage issues of diversity, authenticity. All of those skills are built only when you are able to then, you've actually experienced or walked the journey in terms of being a transformational leader. Yeah, if I've left anything, Samuel and Craig, please do step in. Thank you.
Well summarized, Gugu.
Craig, anything you want to add?
I think Gugu pulled it together beautifully.
Right, thank you. Let's see what room 3 talked about. Gijs, Lawrence, and Richard.
Right, maybe I can go. So, yeah, I think Liesel, yeah, I was also fortunate to have some time to do a bit of research and reflect, and it was good to also check in with Lawrence and Richard. So I think some of the early commentary is to say, do we really look beyond what people sell as transformation? And is it really transformation after all? And I think maybe that's the first question to ask, or do people just, and I think one of the words was to cut through the BS. So, and I think in terms of leadership theories, transformation leadership, I've also just dropped into the chat a few links. I know Mias has also been doing some work on responsible leadership at Stellenbosch, and then some other frameworks I've came across. But I think we ended up in a nice conversation around character-based elements of leaders versus behavior, and quite often it borders on it's based on virtue. And if you really think about how that comes from a point of, do you really care? Is there something really deeper to the change, the transformation, if you see it? And I think what transpired in the conversation was a lot around the responsibility towards community. And when you look at community in a broader sense, so to say, we might be anonymous numbers in a city or a company, but is it a true vested interest to give back to whichever organization you belong to? So if you're a leader in a community or in a local municipality, or within a company, so there needs to be skin in the game for you. It's not just people being numbers, taking them through a change and you're doing transformation onto them, but it's true transformation where it comes from a point of care, and you need to live with the consequences as a leader yourself in the long run. So I think that's I think most of the prominent points are raised by us. So Richard, Lawrence, if you have something to add. Thanks, Richard.
Nothing to add? Great. Thank you, Gijs, and thank you for sharing Mias's work.
Yeah, I think there's also a nice framework. So I'm not sure if you came across it, Lisa. There's inner development goals. The work being done by the Swedish group. They have an annual conference that I run, but it's really a nice framework. And a lot of I've attended yesterday's session with people from Ivy Business School, where they had this character-based model where they mapped it onto the IDG framework. But I think the IDG framework is quite useful, I think, from a leadership perspective. And yeah, I think definitely there's a lot of, for people on the call, a lot of free tools. It's open source. It's not something people build around a consultancy necessarily, where you can actually access it. So so that's really open framework where you can go and yeah, get some extra resources if you need something.
Great, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing that. All right, room 4. Dustin, Bali, and we lost somebody else again, Dustin. There was something wrong with going on in your room. We kept losing people.
Makosi. I
Makosi
think
had to drop off,
Makosi had to leave early.
Oh, okay.
but we will share his insights. So, whoopsie. So our group, excuse the dog, it's not load shedding, it's just one of these energy saving lights. We basically, our point of departure was from the comment that you made around a lot has not changed. It's new skins or new wine, old skins. So we looked from a principle point of view. Leadership, in essence, the principles we expect to stay the same, but we know that we're living in a different age. We in the age of technology, and the digital competence is key. And so we looked from the perspective of the leader's personality, and the charisma should not be the first thing that we look at. We know that we're drawn to the charisma, but really having the team trust you. Mbali spoke beautifully about trust, and I hear coming through from the other groups, care, and the other authentic leadership. even coming up in transformational. And we looked from what is our role as people practitioners, as OD practitioners, and really it's to be that mirror to the leader, to say, this is the feedback that you're getting. The transformation is working, or it's not working, or this is the team's thoughts. These are the guidance, and these are the guidelines that we can look at. But we also took note that before we can do that, the leader must trust us. He will not receive, or she will not receive that unless there's trust already established. So to build that rapport with the leader, and then to give that feedback. And then there were two other points that we spoke to. The one of the importance of having a coaching mindset, that you're leading with your heart, and you're not just leading as if it's a project, or leading to attain a specific goal, but coaching and taking your team with you, that it's a journey, that this transformation, for it to really make an impact and make a difference, you need to walk with the team. And the last point that we looked at was, you as a leader, who's your community of mentors? Who is filling your cup? Growth, personally and professionally, is important. So who are you surrounding yourself with? How are you making sure that your EQ is being developed, is being challenged, and that you show up as an authentic and transformational leader at the end of the day? Mbali, you're welcome to come in if I've maybe missed something, or you'd like to just embellish.
Yes, thank you, Dustin. You summed it up nicely, left no crumbs. I'd just like to add that we also did touch a bit, before we were brought back into the main room, we did touch a bit on the ability of the leader to learn from the mistake, to learn from some of the challenges that they do come across. So it's on them to actually develop that skill of seeing challenges and setbacks as a learning opportunity, and to be able to say, okay, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? What are we going to do differently next time? And that's about it.
Great, thank you. Wow. So what I've heard is a lot of, there's definitely something about the personality of the leader, but there's a lot in, if the leader doesn't lead with heart. Two of the rooms actually used leading with heart and kindness and wanting to make it happen, but then also, like the last room said, looking after themselves. Very interesting. I'd like to open the floor to anybody that'd like to comment on what they heard, or maybe ask a question to anybody that shared some of their thoughts.
Usually, if I may, maybe just
Yes,
an afterthought, listening to the feedback, what comes to mind for me is just two things. One, first of all, is that the transformational leader is not frail or weak. That he or she needs to be a pretty strong leader. And the term that comes to mind, and it might spark off some debate, but it's something, and this needs to be some work on somewhat, but it's something like a humble, benevolent dictator. It's somebody that's committed into what he or she believes in, but for the greater good of others, and be humble enough, I think, as Mbali said, to be able to say, listen, maybe I've taken the wrong turn here. Maybe I should learn from this, and I've learned from this, and let's move on. But still very committed. So it's a humble, benevolent dictator. And that's maybe a crude way of saying it, but yeah, that's my thought. But everything else, well said.
Thank you, Lawrence. I think every time you attend our cafes, that you say something that I want to quote in the next newsletter. I'm loving this. Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? Any thoughts? We've got a few more minutes left, like 7 or 8 minutes. Let's have a conversation.
Maybe if I can just quickly, I think what was useful is the initial check-in we had, and I think just to bring it back to the transformation work is maybe the question is, how do you develop then, if there's a development aspect of the transformational leader. And I think we talk about these life experiences, and I think to the one hand, I think Lawrence said you need to have all of this, solved all of these initial conditions in life before you can have this time. This is where you almost say maybe you need to go through crucible moments. And we also played around with the coincidental term that I found quite often in transformation projects is the word being maybe used by consultants, phoenix. And I think to Laurence's point, if you read a story, it's a terrible death to actually set yourself ablaze as the phoenix. So, and I think to become this transformation leader, would you have gone through a terrible death yourself? So what are those life-defining moments, those inner moments to transform yourself to become that leader?
Yeah, and Gijs, there's that quote earlier this week. I remembered who it was by, but that says, "Leadership is like swimming. You can't learn it from a book, from reading a book. Gotta be in it, eh?"
True.
Sorry, Lawrence,
No,
carry
go.
on.
No, just to add to what Gijs has said, in my own personal experience, I can quote about 3 or 4 good transformational leaders eventually, and all of them went through a very intense internal development process, and all 3 of the ones that I've worked with were referred to good clinical psychologists to go and challenge their own demons, their own perceptions, their biasness, and really to be able to say, listen, but I'm a bad person, or I'm a good person, or I'm still learning. And those individuals actually turn out to be the better ones. But they had to, as Gijs, you eloquently said, they had to go through a very tough and a crucial, critical, maybe a messy phase themselves to explore and to discover themselves before they can actually become that leader or those leaders. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I wrote something this morning about the work of developing transformational leaders, because I was trying to wrestle with this. There's this piece about leading yourself, and I think that's foundational. I'm pretty sure that it doesn't matter where you go, we're going to see that leading self piece, that introspection, that phoenix moment. But I don't think it's sufficient, because you must have the challenge of getting in the water. Otherwise, you go through this leadership development program, you do all of that introspection, you emerge, definitely. There's no doubt, there's no waste in that process. But without the challenge of actually leading a transformational project, there's kind of a so what to it. And I'm advocating more and more for leadership development programs to be action learning, to be project centered. So give me something from your strategy that requires a significant change, and then anchor the program in that, and then try and provide just in time, adult learning support for what's happening. But the only problem with that thought is that the deep work that you need on self needs to happen first. It's quite difficult to do that in the journey. I don't know. I mean, could you be visiting the clinical psych while the transformation is happening and you're doing all this other work? What do you think, Lawrence? Is that did they do that work before the change?
It's difficult, it's a chicken and egg situation, but I think oftentimes we send individuals on a leadership development program, but for the wrong reasons, without any future look at, and the word that comes to mind, that's for me, it's a swear word, is agility. And I understand that we need to do things faster. That's the way we live in a data center. But, to only realize this morning that I need to do some transformation, and now I call on Craig to come and do it, or call on Lawrence to come and do it without any preparations. I mean, it's absurd. You know, you will have individuals in your leadership selection process that you have in the wings that's ready or that's in the process. Develop them, I think, before they get to a transformational process. Develop them to be transformational leaders. You don't need to have a project, in my view. You can do transformation in your day-to-day life. You can be the transformation for yourself, and then when the opportunity presents, you can actually go into a project to actually show it. But then, in my view, very critical about corporates. For them, it's all about the numbers, and who will get the opportunity. He who is shouting the hardest, and he who's shining the best. I mean, and I'm saying this in terms of financial results and outcomes or whatever. Doesn't matter if I step on 1,000 or 1,000,000 people, as long as I can make the $1,000,000. But the individual who actually cares for the community, wants to grow this business to another level, even for a lesser profit, those people are overlooked because it's all about the money game. Who's going to be first? It's not about long terms, and that's what I think we need to look at. Corporates, those individuals who decide on transformational processes and who's going to lead it, they need to be educated. And who are the best people to actually lead those processes. But yes, chicken or egg. I think in the worst or best case scenarios is probably that while you're swimming, you have a coach right next to you and say, listen, this is how you do your strokes and how you kick and how you breathe, etc. Yeah.
Thanks. Craig, are you raising your hand or applauding?
That was my attempt at applause because I know you're also out of time. I'm hearing Lawrence say both, and you know, let's have programs for transformational readiness and then have programs for transformational support.
Mm. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. On the dot, 10:30. I absolutely loved the conversation. I loved the feedback. Thank you for embracing that. Thank you for showing up and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I hope everybody found this valuable, that you've learned some new stuff, some new opinions, or at least looking at the old gold stuff from a different angle. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.